Ancient stones whisper a secret across thousands of miles. The hidden geometry connecting sacred sites across continents is one of history's most profound mysteries. And by the end of this journey, you will see the ancient world as a single, interconnected masterpiece. What if the Great Pyramid and Stonehenge are points on a vast planetary blueprint, a lost science encoded in stone? We will explore staggering alignments from Cambodia to Peru and question whether our ancestors possessed a unified understanding of the Earth that we have long forgotten. How does a story written in the landscape change what you believe about human history? Think of the planet as a vast, invisible crystal. This is the core idea behind the global grid, a concept that transforms our understanding of ancient geography. It suggests the Earth itself possesses a subtle, structured energy field, and that the most sacred places humanity ever built are not scattered randomly, but placed with impossible precision at its most powerful nodes. To grasp this, we must first understand the language they might have been speaking, a language not of words, but of shape and proportion. This is sacred geometry. It is the recurring mathematical order found in a seashell spiral, the hexagonal cells of a honeycomb, and the branching pattern of a tree. These are not mere accidents of nature, they are fundamental blueprints. Ancient builders encoded these same blueprints, ratios like the perfect phi, or the golden ratio, and shapes like the vesica piscis, the almond form created by two overlapping circles, into their most important structures. But why? What if this language was used for more than decorating a temple wall? What if it was a practical tool for mapping the planet? This leads us to the Earth grid hypothesis. Proponents of this idea, from independent researchers to scholars like John Michell, suggest that our ancestors perceived telluric currents, the subtle energy flows within the land itself. They propose that monuments like the Great Pyramid or Stonehenge were carefully positioned at specific intersection points of a planetary web, points where these energies were strongest. These points, when connected, are said to form immense geometric shapes across the globe, great circles and even star patterns like pentagrams, with sacred sites acting as the pins holding this vast, invisible template in place. This is not just about mapping location, it is about aligning with the very pulse of the Earth. It implies a unified, forgotten science, a shared understanding that guided cultures separated by vast oceans and thousands of years to build on the same hidden lines. This foundational idea transforms a collection of mysterious ruins into potential components of a single, colossal machine, a machine whose purpose we are only beginning to decipher. A single line connects wonders that should not know each other. This is the Great Circle, the largest possible ring you can draw around a sphere, and it forms the first key alignment in our hidden geometry. Picture the Earth not as a map with borders, but as a blank globe. Now take a string and stretch it from the apex of the Great Pyramid of Giza. Swing that line east, and it passes directly through the heart of Angkor Wat in Cambodia, a temple complex built to mirror the stars. Continue that arc across the Pacific, and it intersects the Nazca Plains of Peru, where vast geoglyphs are etched into the desert floor. Finally, pull that string further to find the ancient metropolis of Mohenjo-daro in the Indus Valley, one of the world's earliest planned cities. These are not just random points, they sit upon a single, perfect circuit around the planet, a belt of ancient wonder spanning 3 separate continents and cultures separated by thousands of years and thousands of miles. The mathematical odds of this occurring by pure chance are so astronomically small that they force a profound question. How could builders in the sands of Egypt, the jungles of Cambodia, the coastal deserts of Peru, and the river plains of Pakistan all choose locations that align on this one precise planetary ring? Theories attempt to bridge this impossible gap. One suggests this great circle was a kind of celestial roadmap, a projection of a specific star constellation onto the Earth's surface, guiding a culture with global reach. Another proposes it traces a pathway of telluric energy, a planetary current that ancient architects knew how to detect and honor, building their most sacred sites where this current was strongest, like placing temples upon the acupuncture points of the world. Perhaps it was even a navigational aid, a literal line in the sand and stone for seafarers who understood the Earth's true shape long before our modern era. Whatever the purpose, the alignment itself is a silent rebuke to the traditional story of isolated ancient civilizations. It whispers of a shared foundation, a common thread of astronomical knowledge or geospatial science that wove these disparate cultures into a single, incomprehensible tapestry. This is not merely a coincidence of place. It is a declaration in stone and earth that our history books are missing a fundamental chapter. The stars of Orion have watched over humanity since the beginning. One constellation in particular seems to have held a special, almost obsessive significance for cultures who never met. The three stars of Orion's belt are unmistakable, a perfect line of celestial fire, and they appear to have been copied onto the Earth in stone not once but repeatedly. This is the second key alignment, a pattern written in the sky and mirrored on the ground across impossible distances. The most famous example is in Egypt. The Orion correlation theory, first proposed in the 1990s, suggests the three main pyramids of Giza are a near-perfect terrestrial map of those three belt stars. Their layout on the desert plateau, with the two larger pyramids aligned and the third slightly offset, matches the celestial arrangement with startling accuracy. Even the relative brightness of the stars seems to correspond to the sizes of the pyramids. For many, this is not a coincidence but a deliberate act of sacred architecture, anchoring the pharaoh's journey to the afterlife to an eternal place in the heavens. But if this was just an Egyptian idea, it would be remarkable enough. The mystery deepens when you look elsewhere. Travel across the Atlantic to the ancient city of Teotihuacan in Mexico. Here, the Avenue of the Dead is flanked by the massive Pyramid of the Sun and the Pyramid of the Moon. When researchers mapped their positions, they found this central complex also appears to reflect the pattern of Orion's belt, though oriented differently according to local cosmology. The builders of Teotihuacan saw this constellation not as a hunter but as a sacred hearth, yet they too chose to build its image in staggering scale. Further north, in what is now the United States, the great ceremonial mounds of the Mississippi Valley, like those at Cahokia, have also been analyzed for celestial alignments. Some studies suggest their largest earthworks form patterns that correspond to Orion, serving as a gigantic astronomical calendar and spiritual map for the community. This recurring motif across continents points us toward the field of archaeoastronomy, the study of how ancient peoples understood the stars and built that understanding into their world. Could each culture have independently looked up, seen the same brilliant trio of stars, and decided entirely on their own to replicate it as their most important sacred site? It is possible. Orion is prominent and visually striking, a natural candidate for veneration, but the alternative is even more compelling. What if this pattern represents a shared celestial language, a primordial blueprint passed down or rediscovered by separate civilizations? The variations are crucial. They are not perfect copies. Each culture adapted the stellar template to their own myths, their own landscape, and their own relationship with the cosmos. In Egypt, it was a gateway for the soul. In Mesoamerica, it was a source of creation. This suggests something beyond mere copying. It points to a deep, universal recognition of this constellation's power. By anchoring their greatest monuments to these fixed points of light, these cultures were doing more than building temples. They were synchronizing their earthly realm with the eternal clockwork of the universe, claiming their place in a cosmic order that they believed was literally written in the stars. This celestial thread connects deserts, jungles, and river valleys in a silent conversation across time, asking us if the true map of our ancient past is not just on the ground, but also hanging above us in the night sky. Mathematics is the silent language of the universe, and our ancestors appear to have been fluent. Beyond the alignments of stars and circles lies a deeper layer of code, one written not in miles but in ratios. These are the fundamental constants, the numerical fingerprints of creation itself, and they are meticulously embedded in monuments worlds apart. Take the Great Pyramid of Giza. Its base perimeter, divided by twice its height, yields a figure startlingly close to pi, the mathematical constant representing the ratio of a circle's circumference to its diameter. This is not a simple coincidence of measurement. Pi is a transcendental number, an infinite, non-repeating decimal that was not formally calculated in the West for thousands of years after the pyramid was built. Yet here it is, encoded in the very shape of this ancient wonder. Alongside pi, we find the golden ratio, often denoted by the Greek letter phi, approximately 1.618. This ratio, where a line is divided so the whole is to the larger part as the larger part is to the smaller, appears throughout nature in the spiral of a galaxy, the curve of a nautilus shell, and the branching of trees. Within the Great Pyramid, the proportions of the king's chamber and the geometry of the internal passages are rife with this divine proportion. But to think this mathematical knowledge was confined to the sands of Egypt is to miss the pattern entirely. Leap forward in time and travel to northern France, to the soaring Gothic splendor of Chartres Cathedral, constructed in the 12th and 13th centuries. To the medieval masons, this was a Bible in stone, a representation of heavenly Jerusalem, and the blueprint for this heaven was written in phi. The spacing of the cathedral's massive pillars, the dimensions of its nave, and the breathtaking geometry of its famed rose windows all obey the harmonious dictates of the golden ratio. It was a conscious architectural choice, believed to infuse the sacred space with a visual and spiritual harmony that mirrored the order of God's creation. Even the enigmatic stones of Stonehenge on the Salisbury Plain whisper of advanced geometry. Analysis of the Sarsen circle and the positions of its lintels suggests the use of Pythagorean triangles, right-angled triangles with whole number sides, and potential incorporations of phi in its layout. This presents us with an extraordinary puzzle. How do we explain builders separated by over 4,000 years and vast cultural chasms all arriving at and utilizing the same sophisticated, irrational constants? The answer likely lies not in a shared teacher but in a shared discovery. These ratios are not merely numbers, they are the observable rules of growth, proportion, and structural stability in the natural world. A builder studying a pine cone or a sunflower head would encounter phi. A surveyor working with wheels and circles would grapple with the concept of pi. What unites Giza, Chartres, and Stonehenge is the profound belief that to build a structure that was truly sacred, that resonated with cosmic order, it must embody these universal laws. It was a form of sympathetic magic in stone, creating a microcosm that reflected the perfect macrocosm. This was more than aesthetics, it was a functional spiritual technology. Some researchers even suggest that structures built with these precise proportions could interact with sound and energy in unique ways, creating resonant frequencies that enhanced ceremonial practices. The stones, therefore, are not just arranged, they are tuned like instruments in a grand, silent orchestra playing the mathematical music of the spheres. But geometry is not confined to the heavens or abstract numbers. It is also etched into the very skin of the earth. This brings us to the most controversial and captivating layer of the mystery, the idea of terrestrial alignments known as ley lines. In the early 20th century, an Englishman named Alfred Watkins was riding across the Herefordshire countryside when he had a remarkable vision. He saw the landscape not as a random collection of hills and valleys, but as a vast network of straight tracks connecting ancient mounds, old churches built on pagan sites, standing stones, and hilltop forts in perfectly aligned sequences stretching for miles. He called these alignments ley lines and proposed they were prehistoric trading routes or ceremonial pathways. While mainstream archaeology often dismisses leys as selective pattern seeking, connecting dots after the fact, the idea captured the public imagination and refused to die. Because it asks a simple, powerful question: what if the connections are real but we have been looking on too small a map? When you zoom out to a planetary scale, something astonishing emerges. By connecting certain major sacred sites across the globe, a staggering geometric shape appears, a massive, nearly perfect pentagram inscribed upon the Earth's surface. Imagine the 5 points of this star. One point rests at the Great Pyramid of Giza, another aligns with the megaliths of Stonehenge, a third touches the mysterious Moai statues of Easter Island, alone in the vast Pacific. A fourth point settles in the region often called the Bermuda Triangle, and the fifth, completing the shape, is located at the South Pole. The precision with which these locations, separated by oceans and continents, can form this ancient symbol of sacred geometry is deeply unsettling. It feels less like a path for traders and more like a deliberate, global-scale geodetic marker system. This idea of a living, energetic landscape is not unique to modern theorists. Cultures worldwide have long spoken of these invisible currents. In China, they are known as dragon lines, the paths of celestial and terrestrial energy, or Kai, that flow through the earth. Master geomancers or practitioners of Feng Shui would carefully select sites for temples, palaces, and tombs to harness this beneficial flow. On the other side of the world, Aboriginal Australians speak of song lines, intricate pathways that crisscross the continent, connecting sacred sites through story, ceremony, and navigation. These are not just physical routes, they are maps of spiritual power and ancestral memory, sung into existence. So, are we looking at imaginative cartography, connecting famous dots into pleasing shapes? Or is there a deeper layer of evidence for a lost science that understood the Earth's energetic anatomy? The pentagram alignment, while compelling, is often criticized because on a sphere, you can connect any 5 points to form some version of this shape. The key may lie in the consistency of the sites chosen and their undeniable cultural significance as power places. Perhaps ley lines and dragon lines are not about literal straight lines on a map, but about tracing flows of telluric energy that do not always follow straight paths. In this view, sacred sites were not randomly placed, but carefully positioned at powerful nodes or intersections in this planetary web, much like acupuncture points on the human body. The Great Pyramid, Stonehenge, Easter Island, they would be the needles placed to stabilize, channel, or amplify the Earth's own vital energy for purposes we can only guess at, from enhancing spiritual practice to somehow balancing the planet itself. This transforms the landscape from a passive backdrop into an active participant in human civilization, a living grid that our ancestors may have learned to listen to and to build upon, in harmony with a force we have long since forgotten how to perceive. The sun was the first and most reliable clock humanity ever knew. Its daily arc and yearly journey provided the fundamental rhythm for planting, harvest, and ceremony, a rhythm etched in stone across the globe with impossible consistency. This brings us to the third key alignment, the solar and equinoctial pathways. It is one thing for a culture to build a single calendar stone, but another entirely when that same precise solar knowledge is found mirrored at sacred sites on opposite sides of the planet, as if following a universal instruction manual. The most famous example is, of course, Stonehenge. On the summer solstice, the longest day of the year, the sun rises directly over the heel stone, casting a beam of light into the heart of the stone circle. This was not an accident, but a colossal astronomical computer built to mark this pivotal moment in the solar cycle. Yet, travel over 5,000 miles to the Andes Mountains of Peru, to the lost city of Machu Picchu. High atop the complex sits the Intihuatana stone, often called the hitching post of the sun. During the equinoxes, when day and night are equal, the stone casts no shadow at all, a perfect demonstration of solar alignment. Nearby, the Temple of the Sun is precisely oriented to capture the solstice sunrise. Meanwhile, back in the Americas, at Teotihuacan in Mexico, the massive Pyramid of the Sun is not aligned to true north, but is instead offset by 15.5 degrees, an orientation that aligns with the sun's setting position on two specific sacred days in the Mesoamerican calendar. These are not vague gestures toward the sky. They are precise, engineered alignments, and they raise a compelling question. If these cultures developed in total isolation, why did they all invest such enormous effort to solve the same complex astronomical and architectural problem? Practical answer is clear. Solar alignment creates a reliable calendar. Knowing the solstice meant knowing when to plant crops, when to expect seasonal rains, and when to hold vital ceremonies to ensure the sun's return. It was a matter of survival and social order, but the uniformity of the solution hints at something more. Could there have been a shared, primordial understanding of solar geometry that diffused across the world? Or does it point to a deeper, almost instinctual human impulse to physically anchor our most sacred spaces to the most powerful visible force in our sky? This solar thread weaves an even larger pattern when we look at a map from a higher vantage point. Some researchers point to a fascinating latitudinal alignment. The 30th parallel north is a line of latitude that circles the globe. On or incredibly close to this invisible line sit a stunning roster of ancient power centers: the Great Pyramid of Giza in Egypt, the sacred city of Persepolis in Persia, the legendary Mount Kailash in Tibet, and the ancient capital of Lhasa. Even the lost city of Angkor in Cambodia sits just a few degrees south of this line. This is far beyond any reasonable coincidence of agricultural necessity. A calendar site needs to be in your territory, not on a specific global coordinate. So what could explain this? One theory within the world grid hypothesis suggests this latitude, like others, might represent a kind of stable energetic band or a harmonic node in the Earth's structure. Building upon it could have been seen as aligning a temple or pyramid with a fundamental planetary frequency. Another, more speculative idea wonders if these alignments had a functional purpose beyond ceremony. Could the specific geometry of a pyramid or temple, when hit by the solstice sun at a precise angle, have done more than create a dramatic shadow? Some propose it might have interacted with the Earth's subtle energies or even with quartz crystals within the stones, creating a momentary surge or activation, a charging of the site like a battery touched by sunlight. Whether practical, spiritual, or energetically functional, this global preoccupation with solar and latitudinal alignment reveals a unified goal: to harmonize human endeavor with the grand, predictable cycles of the cosmos. Our ancestors were not just building structures, they were building connectors, physical instruments designed to tune their civilizations to the rhythm of the earth and the sun, weaving their stories into the very fabric of time and space. But a shared blueprint requires a shared ruler. This brings us to one of the most compelling and controversial pieces of evidence for a unified ancient science, the possibility of a universal unit of measurement. What if the builders of stone circles in Scotland and the architects of the pyramids in Egypt were using the same tape measure? In the mid-20th century, a Scottish engineer named Alexander Thom embarked on a monumental task. He meticulously surveyed over 300 Neolithic stone circles and megalithic sites across Britain and France. What he discovered was not random chaos but a startling order. Thom proposed that these diverse monuments were constructed using a standardized unit of length, which he named the megalithic yard. This unit measured approximately 2.72 feet, or 0.829 meters. His statistical analysis suggested this measurement was not an approximation, but a precise standard used with remarkable consistency across centuries and vast geographical distances. The immediate question is profound. How could scattered, supposedly primitive communities maintain such a precise standard over hundreds of miles and generations without a central authority or written records? Thom himself believed the megalithic yard was derived from astronomical observations, perhaps a pendulum length based on a specific celestial rhythm. But the mystery only deepens when we look beyond the British Isles. When researchers applied Thom's unit to other iconic sites, a startling pattern emerged. The base dimensions of the Great Pyramid of Giza, for instance, can be expressed as neat multiples of the megalithic yard. The complex geometry of Stonehenge, which Thom also studied, fits elegantly into this same metrological framework. Even more astonishingly, similar units, very close to that 2.72-foot measure, have been identified in analyses of ancient sites in Greece and even in Mesoamerica. This is where the idea transitions from a regional curiosity to a global enigma. Could this unit be more than a local building standard? Some researchers propose it was a geodetic measure, a unit derived directly from the dimensions of the Earth itself. One compelling theory suggests the megalithic yard represents a specific fraction of the Earth's polar radius. If you take the polar circumference and divide it by a key number, such as 40 million, you arrive at a length strikingly close to the megalithic yard. Another theory links it to a pendulum that beats at a specific rate at a particular latitude, effectively creating a portable standard of measurement based on the planet's rotation and gravity. This implies a staggering possibility that these ancient cultures possessed a sophisticated, working knowledge of the Earth's size and shape. We are taught that the Greek scholar Eratosthenes first calculated the Earth's circumference in Alexandria around 240 BC. But what if he was not the first to discover it, but merely one of the last in a long line to rediscover a piece of forgotten knowledge? The widespread use of a potential geodetic unit would suggest a prehistoric science of global surveying, a science that understood our world as a sphere and could accurately measure it. This does not necessarily mean a single global civilization, but rather a shared, advanced kernel of knowledge that diffused across the world, or was independently arrived at through a deep, empirical study of the heavens and the earth. The stones in this light become more than monuments. They become calibrated instruments, built with a common language of measure that speaks of a forgotten epoch when humanity saw the planet not as a flat expanse, but as a measurable, harmonious whole, and built their sacred science directly upon its proportions. The Giza Plateau may be the most studied piece of real estate on Earth, yet it continues to guard its deepest secrets. If the world is a geometric puzzle, Then this windswept desert shelf in Egypt appears to be its central piece, a nexus of alignment so dense it defies simple explanation. We have already seen how the three Great Pyramids mirror the belt stars of Orion, but that celestial map is just the first layer of a much more intricate design. Look at their ground plan, the actual positions of Khufu, Khafre, and Menkaura's monuments. When you connect the centers of these three pyramids, they form a triangle with sides in the precise ratio of 3, 4, and 5. This is not just any triangle, it is the foundational Pythagorean right triangle, a cornerstone of sacred geometry, encoded here in stone over 1,000 years before the Greek philosopher Pythagoras was even born. This cannot be a construction error. It is a deliberate mathematical signature, a statement of knowledge, but the geometry of Giza extends far beyond its own sands. Consider its unique position on the globe. If you draw a line of longitude, a meridian, running directly north and south through the apex of the Great Pyramid, something remarkable happens. This line, which we might call the Giza Meridian, passes through more of the Earth's total landmass than any other possible north-south line on the planet. It slices through continents from the Arctic to Antarctica, connecting vast territories. This has led researchers like Charles Hapgood to propose that this meridian was not an accident of geography, but a deliberate geodetic choice. Long before Greenwich was established as the prime meridian for the modern world, could Giza have served as the 0 point, the foundational reference line for an ancient global civilization? It is a staggering thought, positioning this plateau not as a remote burial ground, but as the literal center of an ancient world map. On the ground, the alignments continue with breathtaking precision. Gaze upon the Great Sphinx, that colossal guardian of the plateau. Its body is oriented perfectly due east, and on the spring equinox, the sun rises directly over its shoulder. This annual event marks a moment of global balance, day equal to night, and here at Giza, it is framed by one of humanity's most enigmatic monuments. This solar alignment intertwines with the stellar alignments of the pyramids, creating a site that tracks both the cyclical year and the slow, precessional drift of the stars, a multi-layered cosmic clock. All these threads converge in the most controversial idea of all, the concept of the Giza grid. Proponents of this theory, using advanced geodetic calculations, suggest that the angles and distances between the Giza pyramids do not exist in isolation. They claim these angles, when projected across the globe along great circle routes, connect Giza to other key sacred sites with mathematical consistency. For instance, the bearing from the Great Pyramid to the ancient temple complex of Angkor Wat in Cambodia is said to be a specific, significant angle. Another line from Giza to the mysterious Nan Madol in the Pacific, or to the sacred mountain of Machu Picchu, might follow another precise geometric relationship derived from the plateau's internal design. This transforms Giza from a masterpiece into a transmitter, its geometry acting as a kind of seed pattern that generates a web spanning the entire planet. Whether one accepts the full scope of the grid theory or not, the evidence on the plateau itself is undeniable. The Pythagorean triangle, the landmass meridian, the equinoctial alignment of the Sphinx, they all point to a level of geospatial and astronomical intelligence that challenges our timeline. Giza begins to look less like a lone necropolis for pharaohs and more like the keystone in a vast planetary arch of sacred architecture. It feels engineered to be a central node, a fixed point in a grand design, asking us if these stones were meant not just to house the dead, but to anchor the living earth to a forgotten celestial order. Deep within the Cambodian jungle, a stone universe rises from the earth. Angkor Wat is not merely a temple, it is a perfect scaled model of the Hindu cosmos carved from sandstone. Its vast, rectangular moat represents the primordial cosmic ocean. The concentric galleries and walkways are the mountain ranges that ring the world. And at its very heart, 5 majestic towers rise like lotus buds, depicting the sacred Mount Meru, the axis of all creation. This was a place designed to bring heaven down to earth, to allow a king and his people to walk through a divine blueprint. But the geometry of this sacred map extends far beyond its religious symbolism, reaching into the stars and across the planet in ways that suggest a deeper, more scientific purpose. Look up from the central towers and trace a line to the northern sky. Researchers studying the layout of the entire Angkor complex, which spans over 160 square miles and contains hundreds of temples, have noted a startling correlation. The major temples do not appear to be randomly placed. When plotted on a map, their positions seem to mirror the stars of the constellation Draco, the dragon, as they would have appeared in the sky at the temple's foundation in the 12th century. This celestial mirroring echoes the practice we saw at Giza with Orion, but with a different stellar guide. It reinforces the idea that these were not just spiritual centers, but anchored observatories, their very foundations laid to reflect a specific, eternal pattern in the night sky. Yet the most compelling connection is not vertical toward the heavens, but horizontal across the curve of the Earth itself. Measure the longitudinal distance between the Great Pyramid of Giza and the central tower of Angkor Wat. The separation is precisely 72 degrees of longitude. This number is not random. In the slow, grand wobble of our planet's axis, known as the precession of the equinoxes, it takes approximately 72 years for the equinox point to shift by a single degree along the ecliptic. 72 is a sacred, cyclical number found in ancient traditions worldwide, a key to tracking the vast 26,000-year precessional cycle. So we have 2 of humanity's greatest monuments separated by a distance that directly encodes this fundamental astronomical rhythm. Could this be a staggering coincidence of geography and sacred numerology? Or does it point to a deliberate act of global geodetic placement? This possibility transforms Angkor Wat from an isolated wonder into a potential calculated marker on a planetary grid. If Giza was considered a 0 point or a primary node, then placing another supreme sacred site exactly 72 degrees to the east creates a profound geometric relationship. It divides the Earth's circumference into a perfect fifth, as 360 degrees divided by 72 equals 5. This resonates with the pentagram pattern some researchers see connecting global sites. Angkor Wat, in this view, was not built just for the Khmer Empire alone. Its location may have been chosen to fulfill a requirement in a much older, wider plan, a plan that understood the Earth as a measurable sphere and used precessional numbers as its units of design. The implications are quietly breathtaking. It suggests the builders of Angkor, while creating a masterpiece of their own culture and cosmology, were perhaps also following a silent, inherited rule. They may have been aligning their terrestrial map of Mount Meru not only with the stars of Draco, but with another earthly mountain of stone far to the west, the Great Pyramid. This creates a dual alignment, both celestial and geodetic, weaving the temple into a web of meaning that spans from the specific constellations above to the entire globe below. Angkor Wat stands as a testament to this dual purpose, a spiritual engine for its people and a possible stone footnote in a forgotten science of Earth, a deliberate point placed where sacred number, star map, and planetary geography perfectly intersect. The cosmos itself holds the key to this ancient mystery, ticking with a rhythm so slow it escapes a human lifetime entirely. This is the precession of the equinoxes, the great celestial clock in the sky. Our planet does not spin perfectly upright. It wobbles gently on its axis like a slowing top. This wobble, completing one full cycle every 25,920 years, gradually shifts our view of the stars from the ground. The constellation rising with the sun on the spring equinox changes over centuries, moving backward through the zodiac. This grand cycle was known to ancient astronomers as the Great Year, and its shadow falls across myths and monuments worldwide. The number 72, the precise longitudinal separation between Giza and Angkor Wat, is the numerical heartbeat of this cycle. It takes approximately 72 years for the equinox point to shift by a single degree. This number echoes everywhere, from the 72 conspirators in Egyptian myth who plotted against Osiris, to the 72 disciples sent out in some Christian traditions, to the 72 hidden names of God in Kabbalistic thought. It appears not as a random figure, but as a sacred code for tracking deep cosmic time. Many ancient cultures spoke of world ages, vast epochs that began and ended with celestial transitions. The Maya calculated cycles within cycles, their long count calendar hinting at an awareness of these immense scales. Hindu cosmology describes yugas, ages of descending virtue, spanning hundreds of thousands of years. The Greek philosopher Plato wrote of a perfect year completed when the sun, moon, and planets all return to their original positions. This universal preoccupation with cosmic cycles suggests our ancestors were not just marking seasons, they were attempting to navigate time itself on a geological scale. This changes how we see the alignments. A temple perfectly aligned to the star Sirius or the constellation Orion at its construction would, over centuries, slowly lose that precise alignment due to the relentless drift of precession. So why build with such painstaking millennial accuracy for an alignment that would decay within generations? The answer is haunting. They may not have been building for their own time at all. These sites could be permanent markers set in stone, intended to record a celestial snapshot for a future epoch, or to act as a fixed reference point against which the slow precessional drift could be measured. Imagine constructing a clock so vast its hour hand takes 2,160 years to move from one zodiac house to the next. You would not build it for yourself, you would build it for civilizations yet to come. This perspective transforms sacred sites from ceremonial centers into components of a planetary warning system or a recovery manual. If ancient cultures understood that the Great Year brought cyclical upheavals, perhaps myths of floods and fires and golden ages, then embedding the data of the cycle into indestructible monuments makes profound sense. They would be geodetic time capsules storing the knowledge of when in the cosmic cycle they were built, so that a future civilization, emerging from a dark age or a cataclysm, could look at Giza, Angkor, or Teotihuacan, decode their alignments against the shifted stars, and recalibrate their own place in the grand celestial timetable. The stones, then, are more than tombs or temples. They are pages in a survival guide written across the landscape, a silent testament to a forgotten understanding that true civilization endures only when it remembers how to read the clock of the heavens. The map of this ancient mystery does not end at the shores of inhabited continents. To find its final points, we must look toward the ends of the earth, to the frozen, seemingly empty expanses of the poles. This is the fourth key alignment, the Antarctic anomaly, a consideration that pushes the boundaries of the known ancient world into realms of pure speculation and profound possibility. While no known ruins stand upon the surface ice of Antarctica, the geometric patterns formed by connecting global sacred sites often point insistently toward the polar regions. In the global pentagram we discussed earlier, one of its 5 vertices rests precisely at the South Pole. This is not a site you can visit or build upon in the traditional sense, but within the logic of a planetary grid, It functions as a crucial anchor point, a fixed geometric necessity for the shape to exist on a sphere. The poles, in this view, are not barren wastelands but the foundational pins around which the entire energetic web of the Earth might be stretched and stabilized. They could represent the ultimate nodes in a system designed to harmonize the planet's subtle energies. This idea finds an eerie echo in a centuries-old document that continues to baffle historians. In 1513, an Ottoman admiral and cartographer named Piri Reis compiled a world map, noting in its margins that he had drawn it from many older source maps, some dating back to the time of Alexander the Great. The most controversial section of the Piri Reis map appears to depict the northern coastline of Antarctica, a continent not officially discovered until 1820. Even more astonishingly, it shows this coastline not under miles of ice, but as a landmass free of its current glacial covering. Modern geological surveys, using seismic and core sample data, suggest that Antarctica's coastline could have last been ice-free thousands, even millions of years ago. So what are we to make of this? Mainstream scholarship often dismisses the map as a lucky guess, a mislabeled South America, or a later forgery. Yet for those studying the global grid hypothesis, it presents a tantalizing, if highly speculative, clue. Could it be a fragmented copy of a much older map, drawn by a civilization with navigational knowledge of the entire globe, including the polar regions, during a prehistoric warm period? If such a culture existed, their understanding of the Earth as a sphere would have been complete. They would have comprehended its true geometry, and if they were practicing the sacred science of geodetic placement, they would have absolutely included the poles in their calculations. The poles are not just geographic locations, they are the axes of rotation, the still points around which everything turns. In many esoteric traditions, the axis mundi, the world pillar connecting heaven and earth, is symbolically linked to the celestial pole. Placing a conceptual marker, if not a physical structure, at the terrestrial poles would be the ultimate act of aligning the human realm with the cosmic axis. This leads to a quiet, revolutionary thought. Perhaps the hidden geometry we see connecting Giza, Angkor, and Stonehenge is just the visible part of a system whose full design requires these invisible polar anchors. The sites we can visit are the accessible terminals, but the circuit, the complete energetic form, extends to the very top and bottom of the world. It suggests a science that viewed the planet as a single, integrated organism, and sought to place markers at its most vital pressure points, including its rotational crown. While we may never find ancient stones on the Antarctic ice, the persistent geometric pull toward the poles in these alignments, coupled with enigmatic artifacts like the Piri Reis map, asks us to expand our imagination of history. It asks if the true architects of this global plan possessed a world view so advanced. They mapped not just the lands where they lived, but the entire spherical body of the Earth, designing a grid that embraced its every extremity, from the hottest desert to the most frozen sea. Beneath the silent stones, the Earth itself is speaking. This hidden geometry is not merely a map of locations on the surface. It appears to be a diagram of forces rising from the depths. Many of the world's most revered sacred sites share a startling physical trait. They are built directly atop powerful water sources, geological fault lines, or profound magnetic anomalies. This suggests the ancient architects were not just aligning with the sky, but plugging into the ground, designing their structures to interact with the planet's own vital pulse. At the legendary Oracle of Delphi in Greece, priestesses known as the Pythia would inhale vapors rising from a fissure in the temple floor before delivering their prophetic utterances. Modern geological analysis of the site has revealed that this fissure lies directly on a tectonic fault line, one that likely emitted ethylene gas, a substance known to induce trance-like states. The oracle's power was not purely mystical, it was geophysical, a harnessing of the Earth's own exhalations to alter human consciousness. This principle of sacred location repeats across cultures. The magnificent Chartres Cathedral in France, a masterpiece of Gothic geometry, was not built on empty land. It was constructed over a former pagan sacred grove that contained a deep, venerated well. This pattern of water beneath sanctity is nearly universal, from the sacred springs feeding the Ganges in India to the cenotes, or natural sinkholes, considered portals to the underworld by the ancient Maya. Water is a conductor, and these sites may have been chosen for their enhanced natural conductivity. Some modern researchers, like John Burke, have taken instruments to these ancient power places. What they have measured is intriguing, unusual electromagnetic fields, spikes in negative ion concentrations, and patterns of ground current that differ markedly from the surrounding landscape. At certain stone circles and pyramid sites, compass needles can behave erratically, and devices measuring electrical charge register distinct anomalies. This is not magic, it is measurable physics, suggesting these locations are natural nodes in the Earth's energetic body. The implication is profound. The precise geometry of these structures, their careful orientation and specific proportions, may do more than please the eye or track the sun. It could act as a lens or an amplifier for these subtle terrestrial energies. The stone itself becomes a transducer. Think of a tuning fork struck and placed on a table. The sound is amplified as the wood resonates. Could a pyramid or a stone circle, built with sacred ratios and placed on a telluric hotspot, function similarly? It might collect, focus, and radiate the Earth's natural energy field in a specific, beneficial way. This opens a new dimension to the mystery. Were these sites designed as batteries storing this geophysical energy? Could they have been healing centers where the amplified natural fields promoted well-being and altered states for ritual? Or, more speculatively, might they have served as communication devices, using the conductive crust of the Earth itself as a medium for sending resonant frequencies across vast distances? The interaction of sacred geometry with raw geophysics adds a tangible, testable layer to the puzzle. It moves the discussion from pure symbolism into the realm of forgotten Earth science. Our ancestors may have perceived the landscape as a living, breathing entity, and they learned to build in harmony with its veins of water, its fractures of stone, and its invisible fields of force. The stones we see are only half the story. The other half flows silently beneath our feet, a hidden current of power that turns ancient monuments into something far more active, like silent engines still humming with the pulse of the planet. The ocean between continents is more than a barrier of water. It is a chasm of time and history that this mystery must somehow bridge. We arrive at the central historical puzzle, the question of cultural transmission. How could the builders of Giza, the architects of Angkor, and the engineers of Teotihuacan, separated by vast oceans and thousands of years, all arrive at the same sophisticated understanding of geometry, astronomy, and planetary measurement? The mainstream archaeological view offers a compelling and elegant answer: independent invention. The human mind, observing the same sun, the same stars, and the same mathematical principles in nature, could independently develop similar solutions. A culture needs a calendar, so it observes the solstice sun and builds a marker. It seeks structural stability and discovers the strength of certain ratios. This process, driven by universal human needs and the shared environment of our planet, could explain broad similarities without any contact at all. Yet for many, the sheer geometric precision we have seen, the specific encoding of pi and the Pythagorean triangle, the use of a potential global unit of measure, and the staggering longitudinal relationships between sites strain the limits of coincidence. It feels less like different cultures inventing the wheel and more like different cultures building the exact same complex machine from the same blueprint. This gap between independent invention and the evidence on the ground has given rise to alternative hypotheses, each attempting to explain the transmission of this lost science. One enduring idea is that of a lost mother culture, an advanced civilization that predates all known history. In Plato's dialogues, he speaks of Atlantis, a great island nation beyond the Pillars of Hercules that sank beneath the waves in a single day and night. Similar myths of a lost golden age or a prior world destroyed by flood are found in cultures from the Sumerians to the indigenous peoples of the Americas. Could these stories be fragmented memories of a real society, a global maritime culture that mapped the world, established a sacred science, and seeded its knowledge along coastlines before some cataclysm erased it from the record? Proponents point to submerged structures like Yonaguni off the coast of Japan or the Bimini Road in the Bahamas as potential physical evidence, though their origins remain hotly debated by geologists. A less dramatic but equally revolutionary theory is ancient transoceanic contact. Could seafarers have traversed the oceans long before the accepted timelines? The sweet potato, a plant native to the Americas, was found across Polynesia before European contact. Thor Heyerdahl's Kon-Tiki expedition demonstrated that primitive rafts could cross the Pacific using currents. Genetic studies hint at prehistoric contact between South Americans and Polynesians. If people could cross oceans, they could carry ideas, exchanging the principles of sacred geometry and astronomy along trade routes we have yet to fully map. This would not require a single super-civilization, but a web of intermittent contact, a slow diffusion of a powerful intellectual toolkit across millennia. Then there is the most controversial hypothesis, the ancient astronaut theory, which suggests this knowledge was delivered by extraterrestrial visitors. This idea often points to the sudden, unexplained leaps in technological capability in ancient cultures, or to myths and artwork that depict flying vehicles and star beings who came to Earth to teach agriculture, law, and science. While this captures the imagination, it essentially replaces one mystery with another, and most academics argue it underestimates the profound ingenuity and slow, cumulative progress of human societies. Weighing these ideas requires a clear-eyed look at the evidence. The genetic and botanical clues for pre-Columbian transoceanic travel are growing, suggesting our ancestors were more connected than we once thought. The global prevalence of flood myths and stories of civilizing gods could point to a shared traumatic memory of rapid sea level rise at the end of the last ice age, around 12,000 years ago, and the subsequent rebuilding of society by survivors who carried forward fragments of a lost world's knowledge. Perhaps the truth lies in a synthesis. Maybe there was no single Atlantis, but a cycle of rising and falling cultures, each reaching a peak of geodetic and astronomical understanding before a local disaster or climate shift caused a collapse. The survivors, the keepers of the knowledge, would have migrated, carrying their sacred science with them to be adopted and adapted by new cultures, explaining both the shared core principles and the distinct cultural expressions we see from Egypt to Cambodia to Mexico. This view turns the mystery from a search for a lost teacher into a recognition of human resilience, a story of knowledge almost lost but stubbornly preserved in the one medium that could endure the centuries: stone. Geometry is not always about measurement, it is also about meaning. Among the most profound symbols in this ancient language is the Vesica Piscis, the almond-shaped space where two perfect circles overlap. This simple, elegant form is far more than a pleasing shape. It is a foundational glyph of creation itself. In sacred geometry, it represents the very moment spirit intersects with matter, the divine spark entering the manifest world. It is often called the womb of the universe, the generative portal from which all other forms, like the triangle and the square, can be born. You can see its powerful silhouette echoed across traditions, from the radiant aureoles or halos surrounding Christ and the saints in medieval Christian art, to the soaring pointed arches of Gothic cathedrals like Chartres, which literally frame sacred space within this sacred shape. Some researchers even suggest the ground plans of certain temple complexes, where two circular ceremonial spaces overlap, were designed as vast, walkable vesica piscis forms, turning the entire site into a living symbol of divine union. This journey from symbol to experience finds its ultimate expression in the mandala. Originating in Hindu and Buddhist traditions, a mandala is an intricate, concentric geometric design, a cosmic diagram rendered in sand or pigment. It maps the universe in miniature, with a central deity or palace surrounded by elaborate gates and gardens, all contained within a protective circle. The creation of a mandala is a meticulous, meditative act, and its purpose is not to be a permanent artwork, but a tool for spiritual journeying. By focusing on the design, a practitioner navigates inward from the outer chaos to the still, enlightened center, using geometry as a guided pathway for the mind. This reveals a crucial insight. The sacred geometry of ancient sites was likely not just for observation, but for immersion. When we look at the aerial layout of places like the labyrinthine stone circles of Avebury in England, or the concentric terraces of Borobudur in Indonesia, we are not just seeing a collection of walls and paths. We are looking at giant architectural mandalas. These were not meant to be seen from above by anyone but the gods. They were meant to be walked, to be experienced step by step from within. Walking the processional avenue of a temple complex laid out as a vesica piscis, or circling the terraces of a pyramid that represents a world mountain, was an active ritual. The geometry of the path itself, the turns, the ascents, the arrival at a central chamber, was designed to orchestrate a shift in consciousness. It quieted the everyday mind and guided the initiate through a symbolic rebirth or a celestial ascent, using the body's movement through sacred space to trigger a spiritual realization. The stones and pathways were a kind of three-dimensional scripture, a liturgy written in earth and stone that one performed with one's own feet. This transforms our understanding of these sites from cold astronomical computers or inert power nodes into something profoundly alive. They were psychological and spiritual technology. The precise angles and ratios did more than align with stars or telluric currents. They resonated with the innate patterns of human perception, creating spaces that felt inherently harmonious, focused, and charged with numinous presence. The ultimate purpose of this hidden geometry, then, may have been to build bridges not just between continents, but between the earthly and the divine, between the outer cosmos and the inner universe of the human spirit, using a silent language of form that speaks directly to the soul. The stones do not just speak to the eyes, but also to the ears. Recent studies reveal that many ancient structures possess remarkable, intentional acoustic properties, turning them into instruments of immense scale. Within the confines of the Great Pyramid's so-called King's Chamber, the granite walls resonate powerfully at specific, low frequencies, creating a palpable hum that seems to vibrate within your very bones. Across the ocean, at the base of the Mayan Pyramid of Kukulkan at Chichen Itza, a simple hand clap is transformed. The sound bounces off the massive stone steps and returns not as an echo, but as a perfect chirping sound, an uncanny mimicry of the sacred Quetzal bird, a creature deeply woven into Mesoamerican cosmology. And on the windswept Salisbury Plain, some of the smaller blue stones at Stonehenge, when struck, produce a clear, metallic ringing tone, unlike any other local rock. This is not random acoustics, this is a science of sound, a field we now call cymatics, the study of how vibrations shape matter. The ancients appear to have understood that sound is a fundamental creative force, one that could be harnessed through architecture. By shaping stone into precise geometric forms, they could tune a space like a bell, creating specific resonant frequencies within its chambers. This points toward a staggering possibility that the global geometry we have traced might also function as a harmonic grid. If sacred sites are placed at specific, calculated intervals across the Earth's surface, could they be designed to create a kind of standing wave, a resonant pattern across the planet itself? Each site, with its own unique acoustic signature, might act like a node in a vast vibrational network. The integration of sound with sacred geometry and telluric energy suggests these were multi-sensory temples engineered for total immersion. The goal was likely to alter human perception, to use the physical vibration of sound waves, amplified by stone and focused by shape, to induce states of heightened awareness, trance, or healing. The steady resonance in a pyramid chamber or the rhythmic echoes in a stone circle could quiet the thinking mind and synchronize brainwave patterns, opening a doorway to other states of consciousness. Furthermore, if these sites were built upon energetic hotspots, as we have considered, then the sound may have served another purpose, to interact directly with the Earth's own subtle vibrational field. Just as a singer can shatter a glass by matching its resonant frequency, could these structures have been designed to resonate in harmony with the planet's fundamental frequencies, creating a stable, beneficial interaction between the human-made and the Earth-born? This transforms the silent stones into a chorus, each monument a note in a planetary symphony we are only beginning to hear, a forgotten technology that used harmony, both geometric and acoustic, to tune the human spirit to the music of the world. Nature's blueprint for growth is written in a spiral. This is the Fibonacci sequence, a series of numbers where each is the sum of the two before it, unfolding as 0, 1, 1, 2, 3, 5, 8, 13, and so on into infinity. When these numbers are translated into geometry, they generate a very specific, elegant curve, the logarithmic spiral, seen in the unfurling of a fern, the whirl of a hurricane, and the vast arms of spiral galaxies. This pattern is not just beautiful, it is efficient, representing a dynamic balance between expansion and form. And it appears this cosmic rule of growth was not lost on our ancestors, becoming our fifth key alignment, the Fibonacci spiral etched into landscape and architecture. Look at the Parthenon crowning the Acropolis in Athens. While its facade appears as a rectangle of perfect columns, the spacing and placement of those columns are believed by many scholars to follow the harmonic proportions of the golden rectangle, which is intimately linked to the Fibonacci sequence. The building's very outline seems to inscribe this spiral of growth, suggesting the Greeks saw their temple not just as a static house for a goddess, but as a living expression of natural law, a stone flower blooming according to universal mathematics. This concept stretches far beyond a single building. When we map the locations of certain sacred sites, a fascinating pattern emerges. Some researchers, looking at the arrangement of temples in a given region or even along proposed ley lines, suggest they do not always fall on straight paths, but along a graceful, sweeping curve that mirrors this logarithmic spiral. Imagine plotting the positions of several ancient mounds or stone circles on a local map, and instead of a line, you find they trace a slow, expanding coil across the countryside, as if marking the path of some invisible energy unfurling from a central point. When projected onto the spherical surface of the Earth itself, this idea becomes even more profound. Could the placement of major sites across continents follow a planetary scale spiral? It is a speculative but captivating thought that the journey from Giza to Angkor to Easter Island might not be a straight line or a simple circle, but a segment of a vast, growth-oriented curve wrapping around the globe. This alignment to an organic, dynamic pattern carries a deep philosophical implication. It suggests the ancient planners viewed their sacred constructions not as isolated, finished objects, but as active participants in a naturally evolving, intelligent universe. They were not imposing human order upon a chaotic world, but rather they were inserting deliberate nodes of harmony into a world that was already geometrically ordered. The spiral is the shape of life itself, of becoming. To build in alignment with it was to ensure that a temple, a city, or even a network of sites would resonate with the very principle of creation and growth. This blurs the line we often draw between architecture and natural law. It hints at a forgotten philosophy where human creation was never meant to dominate the landscape, but to join its flow seamlessly, to become an extension of the cosmic principles visible in a pine cone or a galaxy. In this view, each stone was placed as a conscious act of co-creation with an intelligent universe, a way of saying their civilization, too, was part of the great spiraling story of life. Their endurance is a silent testament carved in stone. Across millennia, these geometrically aligned sites have faced the full fury of nature, from violent earthquakes to relentless floods and the slow, grinding teeth of time itself, yet they stand with an integrity that defies simple explanation. This is not merely a matter of ancient good luck. It is a pattern of resilience that suggests the builders understood something profound about stability that goes beyond mere mortar and brute force. Look at the ruins of Puma Punku in the highlands of Bolivia. Here, the ground is littered with massive, intricately carved stone blocks, each one cut with such precise, geometric angles and fitted with such exacting, interlocking joints that they seem machined rather than handwork. These stones, some weighing over 100 tons, fit together without any binding material, a technique that has allowed them to withstand the region's intense seismic activity. When the earth shakes, these blocks can shift and settle, then lock back into place, a brilliant ancient form of earthquake-resistant engineering. Across the Pacific, on the island of Pohnpei in Micronesia, lies the enigmatic city of Nan Madol, a network of artificial islets built from colossal basalt logs and coral blocks. These walls, also constructed without mortar, have endured countless typhoons and tidal surges. The sheer weight and the careful interlocking of the prism-shaped stones create a stability that resists being pulled apart by water and wind. This consistent survival across different environments and building materials points to a possible deeper principle. Some researchers and theorists propose that structures built according to the precise ratios of sacred geometry and placed in alignment with telluric energy currents might achieve a form of harmonic stability. The idea is that a building perfectly tuned to the natural frequencies of its location could, in a sense, vibrate in sympathy with the Earth rather than fighting against it. In this view, a destructive force like an earthquake is a chaotic wave of energy passing through the ground. A structure built with random proportions might absorb that energy chaotically and shatter. But a structure built with resonant harmonic proportions could potentially distribute that energy more evenly throughout its form, allowing it to dissipate the force without catastrophic failure. It is akin to a well-tuned musical instrument that can handle a powerful note without breaking, while a poorly made one would crack. The survival of these sites, then, may be a function of their perfect tuning. Their endurance was not an accidental bonus, it was likely a core design requirement. The builders did not intend for their message to fade in a century, they built for the ages. They constructed permanent beacons designed to remain active and legible across countless generations. Each earthquake survived, each storm weathered, is another millennium that the geometry remains in place, its alignments intact, its silent language still waiting to be read. This transforms these ruins from ancient relics into active participants in a long conversation. They are not dead monuments of a forgotten past, but resilient custodians of a knowledge system, holding their precise positions on the planetary grid against all odds, ensuring that the map they form does not vanish. Their stubborn refusal to fall is perhaps the most compelling argument that they were part of something intentional, something meant to last far beyond the rise and fall of any single empire, a permanent signature on the face of the Earth. Satellites now watch from the silent dark above us, offering a new kind of eye. The digital age has transformed this ancient mystery from a pursuit of dusty maps into a realm of pixel-perfect global analysis. With tools like satellite imagery and geographic information systems, or GIS, researchers can plot the exact coordinates of thousands of sacred sites, from the most famous pyramids to forgotten hilltop shrines, and test their relationships with a mathematician's cold precision. This is a crucial shift, moving the discussion from intriguing patterns on a paper map to hard data that can be subjected to statistical scrutiny. The question is no longer just, can we draw a line, but does the alignment exist beyond what random chance would allow? Anyone with access to Google Earth can connect 3 points and claim a triangle, but rigorous science demands more. Modern analysts use probability models to determine if clusters of ancient sites occur more frequently along certain great circles or geometric pathways than would be expected if they were scattered randomly. They account for variables like population centers and resource availability, asking if the sacred geography we perceive is a product of human necessity or a deliberate supracultural design. The results are complex and often debated, but some studies have identified alignments and angular relationships between major sites that statistically stand out, suggesting there may indeed be a non-random skeleton beneath the skin of the world. Perhaps the most intriguing modern experiment touching this idea is the Global Consciousness Project. For decades, this initiative has operated a network of random number generators, essentially electronic coin flippers, placed at laboratories around the world. The hypothesis is that during moments of focused global attention or shared emotion, like the turning of the new year or major cultural events, these machines show a slight but measurable shift away from pure randomness, as if a collective human consciousness can briefly influence matter. Some researchers have pointed their analysis toward sacred sites, wondering if locations like Stonehenge or the Great Pyramid, especially during solstice gatherings or ceremonial times, might act as focal points that amplify this subtle effect. While far from conclusive and certainly controversial, such explorations represent a bold attempt to bridge ancient intuition with modern measurement, to see if these places function not just as historical artifacts, but as active nodes in a living field of awareness. This technological verification is a double-edged sword. It ruthlessly dismisses many fanciful lines and shapes that rely on selective data, the cartographic equivalent of seeing faces in clouds. Yet, it also validates that certain core alignments and geometric relationships possess a mathematical integrity that demands serious consideration. The tools are separating compelling signal from speculative noise, allowing us to focus on the strongest evidence. What emerges is a picture where modern science, with its satellites and statistics, is no longer just debunking an old mystery, but is beginning to engage with it on its own terms, asking quantifiable questions of the stones. We are no longer just wondering about a hidden geometry, we are starting to measure its faint, persistent echo across the ages. A persistent whisper of doubt is essential to any true investigation. For every breathtaking alignment, a skeptical voice asks a simple, grounding question: is this pattern real, or are we creating it ourselves? This is the perspective of mainstream archaeology and critical history, and to ignore it is to abandon intellectual honesty. Their argument begins with a powerful statistical truth: our planet is vast, and across thousands of years, humans built countless sacred sites. If you draw enough lines on a global map, you will inevitably connect some of them into shapes that seem meaningful. This human tendency to find order in randomness is so well documented it has a name: apophenia. We see faces in clouds and constellations in star fields. Our brains are wired for pattern recognition, a survival trait that can sometimes lead us astray. From this viewpoint, the great circles, pentagrams, and stellar correlations are not evidence of a lost science, but a classic example of cherry-picking, selecting only the sites that fit a preconceived theory while ignoring the thousands that do not. A line connecting Giza to Angkor Wat seems miraculous, but what about the countless other temples, mounds, and stone circles that fall nowhere near that line? Are they less sacred or less important? The skeptical answer is that they simply do not support the desired pattern and are therefore left out of the narrative. This leads directly to the charge of pseudoarchaeology, a term scholars use for theories that sound scientific but bypass the established methods of archaeological research. The core criticism is that these ideas often strip sites of their authentic cultural context. The builders of Stonehenge were a Neolithic society with their own cosmology, tools, and social structure. To claim they were part of a global grid designed by a lost super-civilization can be seen as dismissive of their actual, incredible achievements. It replaces the known, complex story of human innovation with a simpler, more sensational mystery. Furthermore, archaeologists point to a profound lack of direct evidence for the kind of global contact or unified civilization these theories require. Where are the trade goods, the shared pottery styles, the linguistic links, or the biological evidence of such widespread interaction? The sweet potato in Polynesia is a fascinating outlier, not a rule. The principle of Occam's razor is often invoked here, the idea that the simplest explanation, the one requiring the fewest assumptions, is usually correct. Is it more likely that a dozen cultures independently learn to track the sun and build stable structures using ratios found in nature, or that a single, technologically advanced global culture mapped the entire planet and instructed them all, leaving no trace of itself except these alignments? For most academics, the former is not only simpler, but supported by the actual, on-the-ground evidence of unique cultural development. They argue that seeing shared sacred geometry is like seeing shared human anatomy. Different cultures, facing similar engineering and spiritual challenges, arrived at similar solutions because they were working with the same universal principles of mathematics and the same human mind. This skeptical lens is not meant to destroy wonder but to ground it. It asks us to temper our excitement with rigor, to demand more than just appealing lines on a map. It reminds us that the true story of our ancestors, their independent brilliance, their diverse responses to the cosmos, and their deep connection to their own landscapes, is itself a miracle worthy of our full respect. To listen to this critique is to strengthen the inquiry, ensuring that if a signal truly exists in all this noise, we are finally quiet enough to hear it. The most profound implication is not about lines on a map, but about a mind in the past. If this hidden geometry is more than a collection of coincidences, it reveals an ancient world, so integrated it feels almost alien to our modern minds. For these builders, there was no separation between the discipline of an astronomer, the skill of an engineer, the vision of an artist, and the devotion of a priest. These were all expressions of a single sacred science, a unified understanding of a living cosmos. Their universe was not a cold, empty machine, but a vast, intelligent organism, and the Earth itself was its beating heart, a conscious entity we might call Gaia. Humanity's purpose in this view was not to conquer or extract from this living world, but to listen to its rhythms and build in conscious harmony with its energetic body. The placement of a temple was an act of reverence, a way of saying, "We hear you, we honor you, we wish to resonate with you." This is a breathtaking contrast to the fragmented, specialized, and often exploitative relationship we have with our planet today. We compartmentalize knowledge into silos, study geology in one building and spirituality in another, and often treat the natural world as a resource to be managed rather than a partner to be engaged. The hidden geometry, if real, presents us with a mirror, and in it we see a reflection of a potentially more mature civilization. It suggests they measured their progress not by the height of their towers or the size of their armies, but by the precision with which they could align their society with the fundamental laws of the universe. Their greatest achievements were not weapons of war, but instruments of connection, giant devices for tuning their culture to the frequencies of the Earth and the stars. This forces a humbling reconsideration of what we mean by sophistication. We often equate advancement with technology, with moving parts and electrical grids. Yet here is a different model, one of profound knowledge encoded not in circuitry, but in landscape, a sophistication of relationship rather than domination. It offers a lost template for what sustainable, sacred living might look like, a civilization that saw itself as a careful steward within a living system, building monuments that were also acts of ecological and energetic reciprocity. The stones then ask us a quiet, urgent question. Have we, in all our technical brilliance, forgotten a more essential kind of wisdom? The kind that understands that true power lies not in forcing the world to conform to our will, but in learning to harmonize our will with the deep, geometric music of the world itself. Centering the world is a fundamental human act. This brings us to the sixth key alignment, the cardinal cross, and the profound concept of the axis mundi. Across countless traditions, from the icy north to the tropical south, people have envisioned a central pillar, a world axis connecting the heavens, the earthly realm, and the world below. This sacred center takes many forms, a towering mountain like Mount Kailash in Tibet, a cosmic tree like Yggdrasil in Norse myth, or a simple ceremonial pole erected in a village square. It is more than a symbol, it is the still point around which the universe turns, a place of ultimate order and connection. This deep-seated need to find and mark the center finds its most practical expression in the four cardinal directions: north, south, east, and west. To build aligned with these fixed points is to anchor a structure to the fundamental geometry of our spinning planet. This practice is not occasional. It is nearly universal among sacred architecture. The Forbidden City in Beijing is a masterclass in this alignment, its vast complex laid out with breathtaking precision along a north-south axis, with every gate, hall, and courtyard positioned to reflect cosmic order and imperial authority. Far to the west, the Temple Mount in Jerusalem, a site sacred to multiple faiths, is also oriented with careful attention to cardinal directions, its history layered with structures designed to face the rising sun or the sacred city. This meticulous orientation required sophisticated knowledge, an understanding of true north that goes far beyond following a simple compass. It speaks to a shared, cross-cultural imperative to create a microcosm of perfect order. When you stand in the center of a temple aligned to the four directions, you are literally standing at the intersection of the world, the human embodiment of the axis mundi. This idea scales up from a single building to the entire globe. Some researchers of the world grid hypothesis see this cardinal principle etched onto the planet itself. They propose that certain major meridians, lines of longitude, and parallels, lines of latitude, form a great cardinal cross. One famous example is the so-called Paris meridian, a north-south line that once rivaled Greenwich, passing through landmarks with esoteric significance. Another is the equator itself, the ultimate east-west divider. Where these major lines intersect, the theory suggests, we often find sites of immense ancient importance. This creates a conceptual grid of order superimposed on the Earth, with certain locations serving as the intersecting nodes of this cosmic cross. Whether this global grid is a deliberate construction or a pattern we recognize in hindsight, the underlying impulse is the same, a universal human desire to orient oneself within the cosmos. In a vast and often chaotic existence, to find true north, to build a door facing the dawn, to place your altar at the exact center of your defined world, these are acts of profound meaning. They are attempts to bring the infinite, starry expanse down to a human scale, to create a fixed point of reference in a turning world. The cardinal alignment, therefore, is the geometry of belonging, a way for a culture to say, here we are, and this is how we fit into the grand design. It transforms architecture from mere shelter into a compass for the soul, a permanent declaration that even in the wilderness we can find and build our center. The soaring arches of a Gothic cathedral are a prayer in stone. Long after the last megalith was raised, the same sacred principles found new expression in the hands of medieval masons. These builders, often working under the guidance of mystical Christian traditions and guilds with secretive knowledge, saw their task as more than construction. It was a divine act of recreation. At Chartres Cathedral, which we have mentioned, the geometry is not merely decorative, it is structural theology. The floor plan itself forms a cross, but its proportions are governed by the golden ratio. The spacing of the pillars, the height of the nave, and the breathtaking dimensions of the famed labyrinth laid into the floor all resonate with harmonic mathematics. The great rose windows, radiating like frozen sunbursts, are masterpieces of geometric symmetry designed to filter divine light into the sacred space. These cathedrals were conceived as symbolic representations of the heavenly Jerusalem, and to build a true image of heaven, they believed one must use heaven's own blueprint, the eternal language of number and form. This was a conscious continuation of an ancient science, now clothed in Christian iconography. The master masons were not just architects, they were geometers in the original, sacred sense, initiates in a tradition that understood the cosmos as an ordered, mathematical expression of the divine mind. Their legacy is a stone testament that the flame of this knowledge was kept alive through Europe's so-called Dark Ages, nurtured in the lodges and scriptoria of a hidden stream. Centuries later, on a new continent, this hidden stream would surface to shape the very foundations of a nation. When Pierre-Charles L'Enfant laid out the plan for Washington, D.C. in the late 18th century, he was not simply drawing streets. Influenced by Enlightenment ideals and the symbolic traditions of Freemasonry, to which many of America's founders belonged, he designed a city as a geometric manifesto. The layout is a complex web of diagonals superimposed on a grid, creating powerful visual axes and symbolic focal points. The most striking of these is the grand alignment connecting the Capitol building, the Washington Monument, and the Lincoln Memorial. This is not a random vista, it is a deliberate ceremonial axis, a secular version of the processional way found in ancient temple complexes. The Washington Monument itself, an Egyptian-inspired obelisk, serves as a central pillar, a modern axis mundi for the Republic. Measurements within the city plan have long been analyzed by researchers who find potential encodings of the same sacred numbers and ratios, from the distances between key monuments to the angular relationships of the diagonal avenues. This was architecture as symbolic language, an attempt to embed the ideals of a new order, harmony, and enlightened reason into the very landscape of power. It suggests that the founders, while creating a novel political experiment, instinctively reached for the ancient toolkit of sacred geometry to give it form, to root its authority in a sense of timeless cosmic law. This remarkable continuity, from the forest of pillars in Chartres to the marble avenues of Washington, forms a compelling argument for a secret history of knowledge. It points not to a single lost civilization, but to an enduring esoteric tradition, a stream of understanding that flowed underground through time. This knowledge was preserved and transmitted through initiatic orders, guilds, and mystical schools, from the building lodges of the cathedral builders to the philosophical societies of the Enlightenment. They acted as custodians, passing down not just techniques, but a worldview, a recognition that certain shapes and numbers held power because they reflected the deep structure of reality itself. This hidden thread helps bridge the immense gap between the ancient mystery and our modern world. It shows that the impulse to encode meaning in geometry, to align human space with cosmic principle, never truly disappeared. It simply adapted, whispering through history in the silent language of arch and obelisk, reminding us that the maps we make of our world are always, in some way, maps of our mind's deepest search for order and connection. The mystery is not locked in the past, waiting for a scholar's key. It is alive in the landscape, and you can walk into it. This hidden geometry is more than a theory to be debated. It is an experience to be felt. You do not need a degree in archaeology to begin your own exploration. You simply need a sense of curiosity and a willingness to see the world with different eyes. Start close to home. Almost every region on Earth holds its own ancient places of power, from forgotten stone circles in a farmer's field to indigenous ceremonial mounds or the foundations of a medieval church built on much older ground. Visit one. Go not just as a tourist but as an explorer. Leave the guidebook in your pocket for a moment. Simply stand quietly within the space. Notice how the light falls. Feel the texture of the stone. Listen to the wind moving through the site. Many people report a tangible shift in atmosphere at these locations, a feeling of deep peace, a hum of energy, or a sudden, quieting awe that is difficult to describe with words. This is the first, most personal layer of the mystery, the intuitive recognition that something about this place is different. To engage your analytical mind, turn to the digital tools now at our fingertips. Open an online mapping application. Find the coordinates of a famous sacred site like the Great Pyramid. Then, using the ruler or measurement tool, draw a great circle line from that point and see where it leads. Look for other ancient sites along that arc. The goal is not to prove a grand theory in one afternoon, but to practice a way of seeing. You will quickly learn the challenges firsthand. You will see how easy it is to draw a compelling line, and how difficult it is to determine if it is statistically meaningful. This exercise cultivates critical thinking, the essential balance between open-minded wonder and rational scrutiny. It transforms you from a consumer of ideas into an active investigator. Beyond geography, you can engage with the language of this mystery directly through the principles of sacred geometry. This is not about complex math, but about fundamental patterns. Draw a vesica piscis with a compass, color a mandala, study the spiral of a sunflower or the branching of a tree outside your window with the intention of seeing the Fibonacci sequence in action. There are countless meditation practices and artistic workshops focused on these forms, designed to quiet the busy mind and align your awareness with these foundational rhythms of nature. By creating or contemplating these shapes, you are learning the alphabet of that silent, ancient language. This personal, hands-on engagement bridges a vast gap. It moves us from being passive observers of a historical anomaly to becoming active participants in a living tradition of inquiry. When you stand in a stone circle and feel an inexplicable sense of connection, or when you trace a great circle on a map and grapple with its implications, you are no longer just studying the builders. You are, in a small way, walking the same path they walked, asking the same questions of the land and the sky. You are tapping into the same intuitive pull toward harmony and meaning that may have guided their hands. This journey does not require you to believe any single theory. It only asks you to wonder, to explore, and to feel the possibility that the world is far more deeply interconnected and far more intelligently designed than our modern story often allows. The true map is not just on paper or in satellites, it is waiting in the quiet space between a stone and your own attention. A forgotten truth lies within the alignment of stone and soil. In our era of ecological uncertainty, these geometrically placed sacred sites stand as more than historical curiosities. They emerge as profound environmental guardians. Look at where they are situated, not on convenient, flat plains chosen for ease, but in locations of breathtaking natural power and complexity. Machu Picchu clings to a misty mountain ridge amid cloud forest biodiversity. The temples of Angkor rise from the dense Cambodian jungle, intertwined with massive root systems. The pyramids of Giza overlook the meeting point of desert and river valley. These were not settings chosen in spite of nature, but because of it. The sites are anchors in ecosystems, placed where the living energy of the land was most palpable. This placement reveals a foundational principle. The geometry was not imposed upon a passive landscape, but drawn from an active, vibrant partner. For the indigenous traditions connected to these places, this relationship was explicit and sacred. The sites were seen as keepers of the land, focal points where ceremonial practice maintained balance between the human community and the wider web of life. A sacred spring guarded by a temple was not just a religious symbol, it was a protected water source for all living things. A stone circle on a hilltop was not merely an observatory, it was a covenant with the sky and the earth, a promise to remember one's place within a larger order. This worldview, encoded in the very angles and alignments, speaks of stewardship, not domination. The meticulous geometry implies a deep listening, a patient effort to understand the patterns of the earth and to build in harmony with them, rather than to override or ignore them. To map your greatest monuments to the stars and the planet's own energetic currents is to acknowledge that your civilization is a participant in a grand, intelligent system, not its master. This ancient practice resembles what we might now call deep ecology, a philosophy that recognizes the intrinsic value of all nature and sees humanity as one thread within a living tapestry. The builders did not see a resource to be extracted, but a conscious being, a patterned, energetic entity worthy of reverence and precise engagement. Their most advanced technology was not for cutting or burning, but for connecting and harmonizing. This legacy offers a quiet, urgent lesson for our time. Protecting these sites today transcends archaeological preservation. It becomes an act of ecological and philosophical restoration. When we fight to save a sacred forest around a temple complex or prevent mining near an ancient mound, we are doing more than saving old stones. We are honoring a model of coexistence, a proven template for how to inhabit the earth with awareness and respect. We are safeguarding places that physically demonstrate a different possibility, a civilization that measured its sophistication by its alignment with natural law, not by its distance from it. These silent, geometric sentinels ask us if our own maps, our cities and farms and borders, could ever be redrawn with such reverence, reminding us that the most sustainable future might be one that remembers how to listen to the ancient song of the land. The stones have given us their alignments, but they have yet to name their architects. Who were the master surveyors who first walked these great circles and drove the first marker into the ground? We have no names, no portraits, no records of the individuals who conceived a plan spanning the entire earth. Their identities are lost, absorbed into the collective myths of flood-surviving sages, star-born teachers, or gods who walked among humanity. This anonymity is part of the power of the mystery, forcing us to look not for a person, but for a principle, a school of thought so fundamental it transcended individual ego. We are left to wonder about the tools they wielded. Our modern minds leap to advanced technology, lost instruments of crystal or bronze. Yet perhaps their most sophisticated device was a profound, trained perception, an ability to read the land's subtle energies through dowsing, astronomy, or an attuned sensitivity we no longer cultivate. They may have used simple sighting rods and lengths of cord, but guided by a cosmological understanding that saw the planet as a whole, a geometric body to be measured with the constants of nature itself. This leads to a tantalizing mathematical question: is there a source code, a single primary shape from which this entire global geometry unfolds? Some researchers point to the sphere itself, the perfect form. Others propose the vesica piscis, the moment of overlap from which all other forms emerge. Perhaps it is the simple, profound act of drawing a circle on a sphere, which immediately creates a great circle and a center, the first axis mundi. The search for this generative seed is a search for the first thought behind the entire system. The path forward now lies not only in re-examining old stones, but in deploying new senses. Advanced archaeoacoustics can map the resonant frequencies of chambers and landscapes with laser precision, revealing if these sites were tuned to specific, shared harmonics. Deep ground penetrating radar and LiDAR surveys promise to peel back jungle canopy and desert sand, potentially revealing lost cities, buried geometric earthworks, or even connecting pathways that complete local patterns we can only half see. The most promising frontier is truly interdisciplinary, a fusion of hard science and soft perception. Imagine teams combining archaeologists, geophysicists measuring telluric currents, botanists studying ancient sacred groves, and psychologists studying consciousness, all working on the same site simultaneously. Such a collaboration could build a multidimensional model of these places, not just as historical artifacts, but as active, integrated systems. Underlying all this is the enduring quest for a Rosetta Stone of sacred geometry, a single site or artifact that unequivocally explains the system. It would be a place where the geometry, the astronomy, the acoustics, and perhaps even instructions are so blatantly clear that the purpose becomes undeniable. Some believe it may still lie hidden, awaiting discovery in a remote valley or beneath the polar ice. Others suspect it has been in plain sight all along, in a site like Giza or Angkor, waiting for us to develop the conceptual framework to finally read its full message. This is the beautiful, frustrating nature of this enigma. Every answered question seems to unveil three more. A confirmed alignment leads to inquiries about its purpose. which leads to questions about the knowledge required to create it, which circles back to the mystery of the surveyors themselves. This recursive depth is not a flaw in the theory, but a hallmark of a truly profound mystery, one that meets us at the level of our own understanding and constantly invites us to look deeper. It ensures that the hidden geometry connecting our world will remain a living question, captivating the curious, challenging the skeptical, and inspiring seekers for generations yet to come. The evidence does not speak in shouts, but in a quiet, persistent whisper from every corner of the world. When we step back from the individual stones and lines, we see a tapestry woven from threads of impossible consistency. The same geometric shapes appear in the desert, the jungle, and the mountain pass. The same mathematical constants are encoded in granite and sandstone, separated by oceans. The same stars are mirrored on the ground by cultures who should never have met. The same stories of a lost, instructive past echo in myths from every continent. Individually, any one of these alignments could be a fascinating coincidence, a product of human pattern seeking, or a simple result of practical needs. But together they accumulate. The sheer weight of these repeating patterns, this global resonance of form and number, becomes difficult to dismiss as mere chance or independent invention. It points toward a profound, unsettling possibility. It suggests there was a time in the deep past, a prehistoric epoch, when human understanding reached a peak of integration we have since forgotten. This was not necessarily a single global empire with flying machines, but perhaps a golden age of shared knowledge, where a sacred science of earth and sky was cultivated and practiced across the world. It was a science that saw no division between the spiritual and the physical, that understood the planet as a living, geometric being and humanity as its conscious partner. The builders were not primitive, they were sophisticated in a way we struggle to measure, because their sophistication was based on harmony with natural law, not domination over it. This hidden geometry is their legacy, a legacy not written on fragile parchment, but carved into the very bones of the earth. It is a silent, stone-built testament, a network of permanent markers saying, we were here, we understood, and we connected our world to the cosmos. Whether the architects were survivors of a forgotten civilization, enlightened seafarers, or simply the inheritors of a primordial knowledge passed down through countless generations, the result is the same. Our map of history is incomplete. A vast, interconnected chapter of the human story has been erased from our collective memory, leaving only these geometric clues scattered across the landscape like fragments of a shattered mirror. Each fragment reflects a piece of the same truth, that our ancestors saw the world as a whole, and they built a civilization, or perhaps many civilizations, in conscious, precise alignment with its deepest patterns. To recognize this is not to diminish the incredible, unique achievements of Egypt or Cambodia or Peru. It is to place them within a grander, more mysterious narrative. It invites us to lift our gaze from the isolated ruins and see the connections, to read the lines between the points. This is not about proving a specific theory, but about opening a door to a wider wonder. The tapestry, once seen, cannot be unseen. It asks us to hold two ideas in our minds at once, to honor the known brilliance of individual cultures while daring to consider that they may have all been following the same ancient and beautifully hidden map. From the solstice alignment at Stonehenge to the stellar mirror at Angkor Wat, the hidden geometry connecting sacred sites paints a portrait of an ancient world far more interconnected and insightful than we ever imagined. We have traced great circles around the globe, found the same stars mirrored in stone across oceans, and uncovered a silent language of mathematics etched into mountains and deserts. The sheer weight of these patterns, repeating across time and space, forms a chorus too harmonious to ignore. It whispers of a forgotten chapter, a time when humanity saw itself not as separate tribes on a flat map, but as participants in a living, geometric cosmos. While many questions remain unanswered and healthy skepticism guides us toward clearer truths, the alignments themselves stand as permanent invitations to wonder. They challenge the story of isolated ancient cultures, suggesting instead a shared foundation of knowledge, a sacred science of earth and sky that was understood, practiced, and encoded into the most enduring monuments our species has ever built. Perhaps the ultimate purpose of this global geometry was not merely functional, to track time or harness energy, but philosophical. It was a way to map the human soul onto the vastness of the cosmos, to create physical anchors for a spiritual understanding that we belong to an intelligent, patterned whole. The stones were teachers, and their lesson was one of connection, harmony, and our place within a grand design. If these ancient sentinels could speak, they might not reveal the names of their builders or the blueprints of lost machines. Instead, they might simply ask us to look again, to see the lines between the points, and to remember our own capacity for awe. The greatest mystery, then, may not lie buried in the distant past, but waits within our willingness to perceive the profound connections woven into the very fabric of our world. What do you think lies behind these staggering alignments? Share your thoughts and theories in the comments below. If this journey through hidden history resonated with you, consider subscribing for more deep dives into the world's greatest mysteries.